I have to admit that I was able to use you in this interview as bragging rights during my hometown visit recently
No.
to Long Beach, California. My girlfriends and I met up for karaoke, and they're like, "So, how are things going with Wit and Reason and your radio show?" And I was able to say like, "Well, coming up, I'm going to be interviewing the celebrity psychologist. You might recognize him from Netflix's The Mind Explained." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so exciting." So you made me seem like extra cool to my friends.
I'm happy to be evoked in any karaoke booth. That's a new little bragging right there for me.
You have so much wisdom and knowledge and even just like practical skills that you share with the world with through various social media platforms and Netflix and TED Talks. I'm curious, how do you do it all?
It's probably a better question for my wife.
Right?
Uh, um, she would be like, "He doesn't."
Does
Uh,
it?
the dishes and laundry have piled up this week. I'll tell you the story. Um, so I was practicing full time in New York, um, working in an anxiety disorder clinic in a hospital, and I saw a patient who said, "Dr. Elliott, I got this video I want to share with you. It's really helped me." She showed it to me. It was like this 3 minute long video where my patient was a teenager, and it was another teenager talking about their depression or motivation, something like that. And I watched the video with my patient, and I thought it was so full of crap. Like, it was such bad advice for my
Mhm.
patient.
Yeah.
And so I said, this video, like, I'm glad you found it helpful. Let me find something that might be more consistent with, like, the work we're doing."
Mhm.
And I spent all night trying to find a video that would be good for her that she would actually watch. And at the time, this is like the early 2010s. And at the time, the only videos I could find from, like, our colleagues were, like, big, long lectures.
Yeah.
And I was like, "I don't even wanna watch these."
No.
Like, I think I might watch this in person, but online, this is so boring.
Yeah.
Well, I was complaining to my wife, and my wife was like, "Why don't you make that video for her?" And then I'm like, "You can't just do that. You can't just make a video and put it on YouTube." And she's like, "What the heck do you think YouTube is?" That is!
What you do.
So that's kind of where this started, where why I started making videos, is I want to make that type of content for people who can't access it. And I get really frustrated and sad and upset and mad about how hard it is for people to access someone like you or me,
Yeah.
and how there are so many. You have to first off overcome mental health stigma,
Right.
and which is why I think, I'm guessing it's part of the reason why you do this show, is to share good stuff with the world, and that's kind of what drives me too, is I wanna put a lot of good stuff out there, and, sometimes I think I do a better job of it than others, but that's the drive that keeps me going, is trying to get the stuff out there so that people who can't access it or need some help or need some guidance can be able to find it. And I hope that the stuff I make helps people, um, opens doors for people so they know what to do next. I don't think my stuff solves problems for people. I do hope it guides them to where they need to go.
Yeah. I appreciate that so much. And that's why I was so excited to be able to meet with you because that's seems like we have those shared values where it's for me, I wasn't very familiar with psychology growing up either. Learned about it more so late adolescence and more academically in college. And I just saw like all of these dusty books in the library. And I was like, there's so much good information here. Why don't I or my friend know about this kind of
Yeah.
stuff? Why doesn't my family know about this kind of stuff? And it's like, why is all of this research and knowledge like just being kind of gate gate kept gate
Yeah.
in these, ivory towers?
Yeah.
Not everyone can afford to go to college, even just to
Yeah.
get the information. Not everyone has a psych AP courses,
Yep.
and coming from watching the development of social media in my early adulthood, it's amazing to see how media has evolved in a way that it can be a place where we can openly talk about mental health, both from personal experiences, and from an educational perspective, and especially like you're talking about, guide encouraging and guiding people to get connected to mental health service.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the internet has created opportunities for us to have conversations about mental health
Mhm.
that weren't really happening before. Like
Yeah.
when I was in grad school, I I don't think I would ever be able to imagine a time where I could talk about my own anxiety
Right.
and be a practicing psychologist. Like that those things did not gel together. But I think as social media started to come online, these conversations were happening even more. And just the idea that we are, Twitter, rest in peace. Like when w- what I saw on Twitter were these auth- uh, the people that were doing well were the people who were more authentic. Like they were their professional self, but also they talked about like the movies they're watching
Mm.
and like the things that they're upset about and the things that they're obsessed about. Um, and that was cool to me. And the more I started doing this kind of stuff, the more I realized that I could not just be like Dr. Ali, like psychologist, like
Mhm.
professional person. It's also the geeky side of me or the anxious side of me or the kid who's so or the guy who's so overwhelmed that I want to like yell at my kid's side of me. Like these are all things that
Right.
are a part of me and authenticity is it's kind of all we've got now. It's what is the best tool I think we have to connect with other people because that's the other thing that's changed now. Now that we're like more than 10 years out from social media coming online, there's so much noise out there. There's so much stuff that I think the only thing that cuts through that noise is you being your honest, authentic self. Because there's only one person like and I think a lot of people try to emulate other personas on YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff, but, like, really the only thing that's gonna connect with people is you.
Yeah. And trying to be anything else but you is just exhausting.
Yeah,
Just make it easier for
100%.
yourself. Just for your
Yes.
Is this correct? You didn't have, like, any familiarity with psychology prior to college?
No, no, I didn't go to school that had, like, AP psychology, I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about it. My knowledge of, like, mental health, first
Right.
off,
Right.
was like Frasier, the TV show,
Yeah.
and What About Bob? Like, those are my 2,
Yeah.
like,
I
touch
gotta look
points.
into What About Bob? I missed that one. Mine was Frasier and then Dr. Laura and
From Sopranos? Is that no.
from, an old radio show that my mom would make me listen to in the
Oh, wow. So
I'm guessing it was in LA because that's where I grew up, so I don't know if this Dr. Laura was, broadcasted anywhere else, but
yeah.
I later did a media psychology class and did some research, not officially like a psychologist. And then like Dr. Phil, so
Oh, right,
those
right, right.
that was our representation, at the
Yeah,
time. And
yeah.
so for you, what was your understanding of psychology and mental health in particular growing up?
Like, poor and bad and limited and almost nothing. Like, I thought it was, uh like, What About Bob is, like, a really silly comedy, and the therapist in that movie, I think, is pretty terrible. Yeah, 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 right, right.
We're in the butt of every joke.
Right. Like, it's so cold And so, like, sits here in the chair and is like, "Talk about feeling," or something I remember thinking, like, "This job is a joke," when I saw
Right?
that. But it was the movie was literally a joke, and then
Yeah.
Frasier also was like a comedy, and I thought it was kind of ridiculous, and that I would me never was there an idea that I would ever go see one of these people, let alone become one of these people.
Wow, yeah.
So that just it just was not I the schema, the memory, the idea, the concept for me just did not really exist.
It also seems like media was really impactful
Oh, yeah.
in your psychological development, or at
Oh,
least
100%.
curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Looking back, I mean, what are your thoughts about media's impact today? I mean, we have a little bit more diversity on mental health professionals like
Yeah.
yourself in the media representing, um, and then a little bit more diversity and representation, and even just like content matter available to us in the media. What are your thoughts around like media's impact on viewers today?
Yeah, it's a wild thing to even consider that I like you said, like you, it's wild to think that I am now a part of these things that were a huge impact on me growing up. Um, I think big picture, it's a totally different world in a good way compared to the stuff I was growing up with. So, um, if you look at just stories that had a huge impact on me, Saved by the Bell was another one.
Yep.
I really wanted to be Zach Morris.
Yeah.
I had I wanted to be this, like, white, blonde hair, big sweater, cell phone ha carrying guy,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
yeah, and that, like, was totally impossible, like, I look nothing like Zach Morris, but I wanted to be him, and, I think, like, stories like that, there are a lot more like, there's that one Saved by the Bell episode where, someone gets addicted to caffeine pills, and
Mhm.
that's, like, the big
Yeah.
mental health episode. So I think stories now have a lot more mental health themes, which
Right.
is great. I think there's more diversity of themes. I think there's a bit more representation of what a mental health person can look like. I think Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is a good example of that. Never Have I Ever also I think has a cool therapist.
Yeah.
Um, all that stuff is good. I think what I'm uncertain about is how siloed media has become. So there isn't really the big shows that everyone watches. There isn't really the common sources of news that everyone gets. And so I think you can be in one family, you can be in a family of 4, and everyone is sort of plugged into, like, completely different things, and they're all oblivious to, like, what each other is watching.
Yeah.
And that I think that also has, like, consequences. So, yeah, there's, like and that includes stuff like social media or YouTube or stuff that I do, a lot more of. I always meet YouTubers that are huge, and I've never heard of them, and
Mhm.
there's so many people like that. It's such a diverse and fragmented and siloed and, you know, world of media now.
Yeah. And so it seems like you're kind of referencing like how algorithms kind of give everybody just kind of like what they want to watch,
Yeah.
and then that could be drastically different across family members. And it's almost like unless you're intentional about your family media use, um, we've lost that experience of kind of sitting down together and experiencing something together, a show
Yes.
together as a family, and kind of learning from that show potentially together.
Yeah. I've never connected dots before, but you're asking me about how you reflected about how it sounds like media was a big important part of your life, and it was. And part of that was all the conversations that my brother and I had about what we were watching.
Right.
And that I get concerned about is these communal experiences we had,
Mhm.
what's happening to that. I think I get really concerned about how hard it is for teenagers and young people to just hang out and exist in the same space together. And I think media was one of those things that really brought people together. And I don't know, like even with my friends, if we're watching the same show, eh, there aren't really any shows that come out week to week now where we all watch the episode at the same time and then we talk about it and we're debating and we're hanging out and it's this way in which we're able to be together. Um I was just chatting with my friends earlier. One of my friends has been trying to get us to watch this old sci-fi show called Farscape for forever, and we're all progressing in totally different places at different times, and one person can binge it all, the other person is watching, like, an episode a day, and then there's me who watch, like, an episode, like, a month.
Oh, no,
So
you're that guy.
yeah, yeah, I'm the straggler of
Holding
the group.
everybody up.
Yeah, so, like, there's no conversations that are happening because it's gonna spoil everything and blah, 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 and,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, true.
so, yeah, it's just weird. It's different. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm wondering if there is any other experience that is like our shared communal experience that's an alternative to
I
like
think
television or or
like, live sports, I think is one.
there you go, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, like, very necessary for communities to come together around this thing, bond together, go through losses, go through gains, all that kind of stuff. And in terms of media, I think it is one of the last things that we all watch together at the same time. Um, but even then, I don't know how many people watch sports anymore.
Well, you
The
know
way it
what
used
we
to
have
be.
coming up, it's pretty big in DC, and kind of countrywide and globally are the presidential elections,
Yeah.
which which can offer some communal bonding and live debates, and let me tell you, moving from California to DC, there and I came in election year, after Obama was leaving, and, they have, like instead of sports bars, it's like debate bars where on all of the screens, it's just all of the presidential debates, and people go regularly, and it's live, so you can't, binge it later and you wanna see it together, and pros and cons.
Yeah. I think a lot that's also in
Sigh.
terms anxiety. Like it's
I know,
just
that's what I'm ready to transition to.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, living and working in DC, especially coming from LA and California, it's interesting, working and living in LA and California, a lot of it is entertainment industry,
Mhm.
and so you have all the politics and business around that and anxieties around that industry and that lifestyle, and then moving to DC, it's very similar except for it's politics. And you have the same level of intense investment in this like field or industry and the ups and downs that come along with it. And as soon as campaigns start picking up, you could feel everyone's anxiety. I mean, you always kind of have a higher level of anxiety. The tension in DC and energy in DC. But then campaigns start hitting up and presidential elections start hitting up, and it's intense. I'm curious if you were to work with people who are facing this presidential election coming up and the anxieties that are associated with it. Any tips and recommendations that you have for our DC listeners in particular that are like in the middle of it and impacted by it on a
Yeah.
moment to moment basis?
Yeah. I think it's important to have some control of the flow of information that you allow into your mind.
Yeah.
So, I think that starts with your phone. I'm a big believer in shutting off every notification except for the important people stuff and the important work stuff.
Yeah.
So I know some people need to be
In the know.
notified. Yeah, in the know,
That's a
especially
tricky part
news.
where it's like,
Yeah, yeah, and
turn off
I
what you
to
can.
yeah, yeah, like, I think it's unreasonable to ask some of those people to, like, turn off your news notifications,
Yeah.
but you know what you have to stay informed with
Mhm.
and what you don't. But, the things that are in your control that you don't need to be plugged into all the time, like, turn off those notifications. And then related to that, um, one of the things that gosh, I'm sounding like such a I feel like I'm sounding like my dad now. But one of the things I miss
Bring it.
from my childhood, uh,
My day. My
back in
favorite
my
line
day,
now.
yeah, back in my day, we had local news.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I think has really changed too, is a lot of the information we get now is much more national level, and it's things that, yeah, we might need to have some awareness of, but they don't necessarily affect our day-to-day life or our local community.
Yeah.
So, after 2016, one of the big changes I made in my life is I started to number 1, I started to listen to the news more than read the news. What I've found is the visuals just kind of lingered in my head a lot
Yeah.
more. But if I listen to uh, moving to DC, I fell in love with NPR because it's what is playing in all the taxi cabs and everywhere in the city.
I've been part of the WAMU, the local NPR station's community council.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
That's a
I
big
had a seat at the table for past 3 years? For 6 years? It was 6 years. I
I feel like that's a big DC celeb moment
right?
right there. That's a big yeah, that's a big feather
They
in
they
your
did a
in your
recording of
cap.
me, like, encouraging people to donate.
Yeah, nice. I love it.
Knowledge is power.
I
Um,
hope you got a good tote bag out of that experience.
have some, like, cool pins and stuff. Have cool socks. They give me very cool socks.
Nice, nice. So I am a big fan of that, and, if you don't have access or you don't want to listen to NPR, there's a lot of podcasts that you can also do, but find a way to get the information in a way that it doesn't stick in your head too much. So for me, that's been audio based. And then also what I love about NPR and why I've stuck with it is it's local too.
Right.
Um, and I know this is kind of a I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, you're in DC, you're originally from LA, and I previously lived in New York. Like these are all areas that
Right.
have we're very, very privileged to still have some local coverage, and most people in the United States, I don't think do if you're outside of a metropolitan area. As much as you can, like staying connected to the information that does impact you day to day, I think is more important. So that's part of it. Control the flow of information, access it in a way that doesn't, it's not as sticky in your head. And that might also mean cutting down how much in the day you are reading that kind of stuff. That's where I'd start. And then the other things I would do is I think we have to have good boundaries on this kind of stuff too. So I have a family member who often texts me like the most stressful,
Oh,
scary news stuff,
yeah. Yeah.
you know, in the news that day.
Right.
Um, and I've had to had many conversations with her over the years that like this is really hard for me to read and to see. And what she has said is this is actually anxiety management for me. Like, I feel less anxious when I read this stuff. And I'm like, okay. So
Is it like a downward comparison kind of thing or
yeah,
exposure kind of thing?
I I do not know.
I'm curious.
I think it is some kind of comparison thing. that like, well, at least this isn't happening,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I know.
Um, yeah, I'm not impacted by this like flesh-eating bacteria.
Right.
Um,
Brings into
and
perspective.
so this is the thing I think we all need is to kind of set some boundaries here with people as well. Um, like you have no idea when you send someone a message or you text them or email them how it's impacting them. They don't we don't see their reaction. So I think if you are having a hard time with that, setting some boundaries or having conversations when you see someone in person that, hey, I really, if elections come up and this is something you don't, you're not in the headspace for, let the person know. That I, this the other changes that happened. I think this stuff has become much more identity driven, much more emotional, and much more difficult for people to talk about than 2008, 2004, maybe 2000 was a pretty emotional one with, Bush v. Gore. Um, but, we have to take care of our mental health and set these boundaries. Otherwise, no one else is gonna do it for us.
Right. I really appreciate all of that advice and those tips and reminders for people. Like try to manage what you can. Depending on a person's industry, that could be kind of tricky because we need
Yeah.
to be informed. But even letting your loved ones, friends, family know, like, hey, this isn't helpful for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brain for sending me stuff like this. Um, my background was in forensic psychology, actually, and
Mhm.
so everyone thought that I would love to receive messages about, like, sex trafficking and, like, this new, like,
Right.
sugar fun cast, and I'm like, "No, this brings me back to work."
Yes. Yes, I feel the same
I don't do
way.
that in my, like, relaxed time. I'm all about
Yeah.
coffee 24/7
Yes.
as much as I can get. So
I 100% agree with you. I often talk about how people who struggle with anxiety tend to have the volume turned up on their anxiety. And so we all have like our knobs and levers are all at different places and
mhm,
different stuff is difficult for us. And so sharing that with the people we're close to, I think is a very healthy thing. And I don't want to give the impression that sometimes comes across in these kind of conversations that this means just like back away, don't engage with stuff. I think we all have causes that are important to us, and we should find ways of supporting that cause,
mhm,
whether that means financially donating to organizations that are doing good work there or volunteering if we don't have the money that to donate, we can maybe donate some time, things like that. Find the causes that you care about and find a way to support them.
mhm.
Um, bonus points if those are local community driven and you can actually see the
Yeah.
tangible benefits more easily. I think we should all be doing that, and also setting some boundaries with this other stuff because it's just too much.
Yeah, and being able to be proactive in what you care about could definitely
Mm.
feel very empowering versus
Yeah.
just being a passive, constant listener
Yes.
about, you know, social issues or human rights or, whatever, murders, like, um, so I appreciate that as well. So, managing the notifications and how you receive content, both electronically and from other humans, setting boundaries with them. Let people know the best way to support you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
boundary.
I mean,
People hear boundaries, they freak out. So, like, we could rebrand boundaries to just let people know how they could best support you,
I think you should put that on a shirt and sell it. That
right?
is a that's great advice. Yeah.
I appreciate all that you've done throughout your life, the sacrifices you've made. Thank you to the support and love from your wife for encouraging you to just, you know, put it out there on YouTube and figure out how to make videos and broadcast them both for your clients and then for everyone else to enjoy.
So I haven't put out many videos in the past few months, and it's because I've been working on a book, and the book
Mhm.
is all about anxiety.
Awesome. Well, we definitely all look forward to it. I'll
I'll
have
be
a
back. I'd be happy to come back and talk about it.
that would be awesome.
Thanks, Dr. Alexis. Thanks for having me.
You can access all of the resources we shared in today's show by visiting witandreason.com/DC radio. Subscribe to our new Patreon account, Wit and Reason, to get mental health tips, deeper reflection activities, and live events with me, Dr. Alexis. Support us by following, liking, and sharing our mental health show wherever you get your podcasts, and our social media posts on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube with the handle at Wit and Reason. That's WITANDREASON.